One night, the guy woke up lying on his bed. Still sleepy, he noticed something in front of his eyes that could not be real. He was trying to figure out if he was hallucinating when he saw a door floating in the air in front of him. There was some kind of frightening aura emanating from the door. The guy got up from the bed and began to examine the door. What surprised him was that the door was just hanging in the air and there was absolutely nothing behind it. The guy even assumed it was some kind of magic. As the guy was examining the door, he pulled the door handle down. At that moment, the door opened inward and the guy fell into the inside of the door. From this abrupt opening of the door, he fell behind the door to the ground. A corridor of some sort appeared before his eyes, with no end in sight. He didn't know where the magical corridor in the magical door came from. The guy must have thought he was in a dream, so he decided to follow this strange corridor behind the magic door. He was like that person in the horror movie who dies first. The guy started asking into the void if there was anyone in this corridor. As he took a few steps deeper into the hallway, he heard someone eating something. Suddenly, a skeleton that seemed to belong to some giant appeared in front of the guy. The skeleton had green eyes. It also had a third eye on its forehead, and there was blood dripping from the giant skeleton's mouth. The guy obviously didn't expect to see such a monster here. After all, he thought he was following the rabbits to a better world. He immediately turned around and ran back to the door. The giant skeleton was not going to let go of the one who disturbed its peace and rushed after the guy to eat him. Running out of the door, he immediately grabbed the doorknob and tried to close it. The guy even apologized for the disturbance and wished the giant skeleton a good life. He was a very polite guy. He was scared because what if the giant skeleton could get through the door? However, suddenly the door in the air just vaporized. After that, the guy heard some voice congratulating him. A certain voice reported that the ability to link worlds together had been awakened in the guy's body. The voice was happy that he had finally managed to find the guy. The guy looked around fearfully as he couldn't realize who was talking to him. The unknown voice asked the guy not to be nervous and explained to him that he himself was trapped in another world and therefore he could only communicate with the guy in this way. The voice informed him that the time of communication between him and the guy was limited, so he asked the guy to do as he said if the guy didn't want to die. The guy still couldn't realize what was even going on. The unknown man asked the guy to open his backpack and take out a relic. Finding something that looked like a relic in the backpack, the guy examined it, trying to figure out what it was. An unknown voice informed him that it was a cursed statue of the king of fallen spirits. He said that someone intentionally put the relic next to the guy's body to put a birth curse on him, killing him and taking the guy's soul, but the guy suddenly survived such a thing. At the same instant, the guy got a flashback, and it turned out that he was not the owner of this body. This body belonged to a high school student, Shen Ye. It turned out that Shen Ye's soul had been burned with the help of the cursed statue of the king of fallen spirits. The guy himself died in a classic scheme from overworking. After that, his soul teleported to another dimension and he took possession of this body. An unknown voice notes that since the generic curse could not kill the guy, it will give power that no one had before. All of this took the power the soul had accumulated over millions of years. He asks the guy to knock on the gate one more time, however the guy has absolutely no idea what else the gate is. At the same moment, the relic in the guy's hands crumbles. An unknown voice informs him that this gate belongs to the guy, and the guy now has the ability to link worlds together. Suddenly, a door materialized again in front of the guy. Immediately, the door was labeled "Polite Person." The guy was told that since he had behaved very politely the last time he entered the gate, he was rated as a polite person. He also saw a sign saying that he had the rank of polite person, grey, broken. Every time he behaves politely, the impression of him improves. The guy is even surprised to read that caption, since it's a passive skill and it's like it's being graded. The unknown voice notes that his power is running out, and so he decides to issue a final recommendation. He advises the guy not to use the relic against his people, because once they realize the guy is still alive, they'll come to kill the guy. He even notes that it's possible the guy will be killed in the next second. The guy asks to wait and wonders who the voice belongs to, as well as why the mysterious voice told him all this. The mysterious voice informs him that it was all done because he needs the guy's help. The world that the guy has fallen into is called the Nightmare World. This world has trapped the one to whom the mysterious voice belongs. It asks that the person become stronger and release it, then it will reward the person. He said something else, but the sound disappeared and the guy didn't hear anything else. The guy had just moved into another body, and he was already probably about to be tried again. He searched through Shen Ye's memories, but he still couldn't find any enemies. Deciding to think about what had happened, he sat quietly on the bed in front of the door. He had no means of self-defense, but he needed to enter the gate to see for himself what was going on. Although he found the idea strange, since there was clearly something scary inside the gate, he decided to give it a try, and if anything went wrong, he would run away. The guy remembered how scary the giant skeleton that was behind the door was. However, he decided to try to communicate with the skeleton, because he would not be able to defeat the skeleton on his own. When he opened the door, he only thought that through communication he could solve almost any issue. Especially, he did not want to get involved in a confrontation with the dead. He even began to think positively, suggesting that perhaps he could get a contract with a giant skeleton and confront the enemies. The guy even naively thought that his new title of polite person would help him in this matter, so he had hope. As soon as he opened the door, he immediately found a giant skeleton behind the door that had no left arm. The guy decided that it was time to start his introduction and politely greeted the giant skeleton. He also informed the skeleton that his name was Shen Ye. The giant skeleton was a little surprised by this behavior from the human. He clearly didn't expect the prey to come to his hands on its own, and he would have food today. Shen Ye apologized for disturbing the giant skeleton and said that he would like to be friends with it. He even remarked that the rank did seem to be working, and the monster hadn't eaten him yet. However, at the same moment, the giant skeleton's giant right hand rushed towards the guy to grab him. Shen Ye managed to dodge at the last moment and miraculously managed to avoid being swatted like an ant, as even the floor under the guy's feet cracked. Walking out of the door and back, the guy didn't understand how the giant skeleton had such strength, especially since he was only trying to talk to the skeleton. Shen Ye barely had time to run back into the door and close it at the very last moment before being swatted by the monster, which ended up only breaking the door. From such a powerful blow of the skeleton on the door, the guy was even thrown back on the bed. The new Shen Ye noticed how his foray into another world was too dangerous. He is lucky that when he closes the gate, it disappears. He even complains that the grey ranks are a total nonsense. He'd like to get something more interesting than a polite person. However, the system informed him that you can only get assessment ranks once a day. The guy has already used his attempt earlier, so the system asks the guy to wait until the next day. The guy complains that the system was useless. However, he wasn't going to just sit around and whine. After all, if the giant skeleton continues to stand near the door, he is unlikely to deal with it tomorrow as well. The assassin was going to appear at any moment, so the guy refused to waste precious time. The guy had been a salesman in a previous life, so he decided to remember his skills as a salesman and decided it was time to be persistent. Opening the door, he apologized to the giant skeleton again. At the same moment, he had to close the door, and the giant skeleton only chewed up what was left of the door. At the same moment, the salesman reappears, only from the already new door. He tells the skeleton that the skeleton cannot eat him, as he is traveling in two worlds at once, so he suggests that the skeleton talk to him. However, the giant skeleton again refuses to listen to this nonsense from the pathetic man and smashes the doors with his right hand. To the giant skeleton's surprise, the guy reappears from the new door and asks to listen to him. The giant skeleton got tired of the guy and decided to just leave the guy alone. However, the guy called out to the skeleton and asked him not to leave. "Dormammu, I've come to bargain." The new Shen Ye tells the skeleton that he only now noticed that the skeleton was injured. He made the assumption that when the skeleton eats people, new bones grow at the site of the fracture. Also quickly examining the skeleton, the guy notices that not only is the skeleton's left arm injured, but also its skull, ribs, spine, and so on. The entire body of the giant skeleton was badly damaged. The words spoken by the guy made the giant skeleton stop. Like a seasoned salesman who will sell you anything you weren't even going to buy. The guy points out that he can't let the skeleton eat him. However, by showing a picture on his phone, the guy informs the skeleton that there are many items and things in his world that are good for the giant skeleton's bones and that the skeleton can eat. Pointing to his phone, he talks about calcium pills that greatly strengthen the bones. The new Shen Ye notices that there are many supplements in his world that are much more nutritious than himself. The guy suggests that the skeleton become friends, and then he'll buy the skeleton some of it. Plus, he notes that it will be very beneficial to the skeleton. However, at this point the skeleton turns around and some magic starts to form in his hand. The guy noticed that he failed this time and needed to come up with a new plan. However, at that moment a gigantic-sized contract materialized in front of the guy. The system immediately notified the guy that the contracting process had begun. He was glad that his plan had finally worked. The signatory of the contract was listed as the progenitor of dark bones, the king of ghouls, the defeated lord of the underworld Mikteti Kahiwa. The whole description of his new friend was unbelievable. Still, the guy wondered why there was an ellipsis after the name. His former fervor and surprise vanished when he read that the defeated lord of the underworld, Mikteti Kahiwa, was the combat warehouse officer of the 5th Command of the Army of Darkness. After all, he had realized that the giant skeleton was just a small fry doing clerical work. The contents of the contract stated an equal exchange. In it, the skeleton reported that 7,000 years ago, humans relied on it. With the talent to create culture, art, science, and technology, the eternal clock of fate struck 12 times that even the gods paid attention to the situation at that time. Skeleton hoped the man could help restore his powers. He had never signed a contract with anyone, Coma the gods, so the skeleton asks that the human understand the value of this contract as best as possible. The contract also stated that if the parties were not satisfied, they could cancel the contract at any time. The contract also stated that by leaving his signature in the box of the guy's name, the contract would be considered a done deal. Using his finger, the guy wrote Shen Ye's name on the contract. The contract immediately stated that Shen Ye was a person who had defeated the curse of the fallen evil spirits, the guardian of the realm of dreams and reality, and the only spatial gatekeeper of the two worlds. She was even surprised that it was all written about him. After Guy's signature, the contract was officially made between him and the skeleton, and their futures appeared to be tied together. Shortly thereafter, the parents took the guy home from the hospital. The mother immediately became worried about her son. She noticed that her son had just been discharged from the hospital, and if he felt sick, he should immediately inform her about it. Mom advises her son to get more rest. She bought a tonic for him and advised him to take it on an empty stomach to restore strength in his body. The father brought calcium tablets. Shen Ye thanked his parents for their concern. However, it was important to the mother that her child was healthy. The guy was an orphan in his previous life, so it was nice that now there was someone to take care of him. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door of their house. It turned out to be police officers from Dongcheng County Police Station. The officer informed them that they would be handling the case Shen Ye was involved in. The officer reports that there are many incidents like this every year that cannot be predicted and that they do not have a solution to this situation. The officer remarks that luckily the guy was able to recover. However, the guy is not a little relieved by this strange optimism. He knows better than anyone that the real Shen Ye died after being subjected to an ancestral curse. Shen Ye wonders to the officers why, if someone encounters such a thing, there is nothing to be done but to go along with fate. Suddenly, an officer who was younger than his partner decided to answer this question. This officer had a metal implant in place of his right arm. He reported that he understood the guy's feelings. However, he also mentioned that the hospital will be closed, and soon no one will be allowed to enter this hospital. Therefore, he asks that the guy not to worry, as there will be no new victims. Shen Ye noticed that the officer had 3 stars, which means at that age he was already a sergeant. The guy thanked the officer for telling him such information and noted that he was afraid someone would start questioning him about everything all the time. Shen Ye seems to be a fan of Doraemon. The officer remarks that the guy is just a high school student, so it doesn't seem to him that the guy might have enemies. After saying that, the police officers said that they were glad that the guy was able to survive and that they were able to talk to him, and after that, they decided to leave the guy's house. Shen Ye immediately noticed that it seems the king of fallen spirits is very dangerous, as not only the police but also the government can't do anything about it, so they are afraid when such cases happen. However, Shen Ye was just a simple student, so it was not clear who had the idea to send such a powerful curse on a high school student. Soon the sergeant returned to the guy's room, looking around. Shen Ye inquired as to why the sergeant had returned. The sergeant held out his calling card and asked the guy to take it. Before he left, he asked the guy to call him if anything happened. After the sergeant left, the guy took a look at the calling card and took the sergeant's name, Luo Fei Chuan. The sergeant's behavior made the guy think that there still seemed to be some good officers left in the police force. However, the new Shen Ye didn't know if he could trust the sergeant or if he could help him. The guy notices that the sergeant definitely didn't follow instructions when he gave him his calling card. He even wonders what the sergeant can do about such matters that the police department and even the government can't solve. Besides, now everyone knew that he was still alive, which meant that the assassin would definitely not give up and would decide to finish what he had started. Despite all the kindness shown by his father and mother, Shen Ye could not be sure that they were not involved in this matter. Therefore, in order to avoid getting killed, he needed to become stronger as soon as possible. With these thoughts, he once again summoned the door to the other world. This time he opened the door with a smile and summoned the giant skeleton. Soon, a giant skeleton appeared above his head, hanging from the ceiling. Shen Ye held out a bag to the skeleton and informed it that he had brought the promised calcium. The giant skeleton extended a finger of his right hand, which was unexpected for the guy as he didn't understand what he should do. He even wondered if the giant skeleton just wanted to take the pills. At the same moment, green energy formed in the skeleton's hands and a parchment emerged from it. A green crystal began to materialize from the parchment. The parchment indicated that the other party was waiting for gifts from the guy. In exchange for calcium from the guy, the giant skeleton will give up a precious relic of an ancient warrior. Low-tier nightmare crystal, an item created by the High Elves, former enemies of the mainland. Low-tier nightmare crystal can instill in the user certain knowledge, skills, intelligence, and so on. As indicated in the parchment, war is an ever-present theme in this nightmare, and the entire civilization and knowledge is built around accelerated combat power enhancement. Shen Ye took the crystal in his right hand, admiringly looked at it. In front of him was a crystal that could be used to acquire knowledge and skills. Suddenly, the crystal in the guy's hand cracked and shattered into many debris. The system immediately reported that the guy had learned a technique: Moonlit Deer Walk. Moonlit Deer Walk, the basic technique of the elves. The undead clan and the elves fight all year round. So to fight the undead, the elves created this technique. This technique allowed them to perfect their bodies. The guy seemed to be energized by the vitality that came from acquiring a new technique. He was glad that he could receive such a reward. He felt that he was becoming stronger. After that, it was the guy's turn to give away the calcium he had brought. The entire contents of the bag rushed towards the giant skeleton. After that, the skeleton hid in the dark and began to examine the contents of the gifts brought by the man. Shen Ye didn't understand why the giant skeleton did something like this. After all, they had signed a contract. He didn't wait for the giant skeleton to eat all the calcium and hurriedly studied the technique he received first. In addition, he heard that it looked like his parents had returned home. The system reported that the first Moonlit Deer Walk technique required 3 agility points. After that, the system started doing a physical fitness assessment on the guy. It seems luck was not on the guy's side, as the system reported that his agility was 2 points and he lacked 1 agility point. Shen Ye doesn't understand how he can get another agility point. At the same moment, he heard what he had feared all along. A stranger arrived at his room and noticed that the guy was still alive. As soon as Shen Ye turned around, hearing the stranger's voice, he noticed the stranger outside the window hanging from the ceiling. Since the curse didn't kill the guy, the stranger decided to finish the job himself. Without giving the guy time to think, the assassin with a blade in his hand rushed towards the guy. Shen Ye, with renewed vigor, managed to dodge the assassin's blade at the last second, much to the attacker's surprise. Although the assassin noted that the guy was moving perfectly, he wasn't going to let his victim go so easily. Shen Ye decided to use his skills and greeted the assassin, then asked why the assassin was looking for him. However, just like with the giant skeleton, the polite person's skill showed itself to be just disgusting and didn't work. In fact, the assassin nearly finished the guy off, practically driving a blade into the guy's head. The system reminds Shen Ye that the crystal gives him knowledge, skills and equipment that have their own levels from low to high. Grey is broken, white is normal, green is excellent, blue is exceptional, and purple is 1 in a million. The higher the level, the stronger the effect. The guy, on the other hand, had the weakest of the skills, the grey broken. Only now did Shen Ye realize that he had an inferior skill, and so it was no wonder that this skill was performing so poorly. The assassin was sick of the guy dodging the blade all the time, so he decided to use a gun since the guy wouldn't be able to dodge a bullet. At this moment, Shen Ye realized that this was no longer a joke and that his life was about to be cut short again. The system came to the rescue of the panting guy. It decided to remind him that Shen Ye can absorb skills and increase his level. Shen Ye doesn't understand why the system was silent all this time and didn't tell him about it. He immediately absorbed his polite person skill. The system reported a successful absorption of the skill, which gave the guy 1 point of agility. Agility increased from 2 to 3, and now Shen Ye could learn a new skill. After dodging the attacker's leg kick, Shen Ye used his new skill, Moonlit Deer Walk. After that, he summoned a gate and hid behind a door in another world, much to the assassin's surprise. The assassin didn't hesitate to rush after the guy and ran through the door. Looking around the dark corridor, the assassin didn't realize what kind of secret room appeared before him. Shen Ye walked to the door behind the assassin's back and said goodbye to him. The assassin was about to finally finish the guy off, but Shen Ye closed the door behind him. In the next instant, a giant skeleton mouth appeared in front of the assassin, who didn't mind taking a bite out of the insolent man who dared to disturb his peace. And so died the assassin, who was not prepared for this turn of events. The giant skeleton, thanks to having devoured the assassin, continued to grow its bones on its left arm. Standing next to the closet in his room, Shen Ye tried to catch his breath and think about what had just happened. He was scared because he couldn't expect an assassin to come to his house. He couldn't delay and needed to find someone to protect him. At the same moment, something began to appear in his hand. The system reported that he had pleased his contract partner when he brought him the person. Following the principle of equivalent exchange, the other party took away the exchange items, and the giant skeleton was grateful to Shen Ye. 2 items sent by the giant skeleton materialized in front of the guy at once. The first item was the pale shadow crown. The second item was the silver war medal. Shen Ye was surprised that 2 items appeared this time. Also, both items were of green quality. Pale shadow crown, green outfit, excellent. Armed with a high-level shadow technique from the dark abyss. While the user wears the crown, he can pretend to be an elf. This equipment was created by the Spirit Tribe's craftsman. Silver War Medal is a symbol of honor for the military exploits of elves in the nightmare world. It could only be given to soldiers who had achieved great success. Using this medal, one could travel to the land of elves. Shen Ye was happy because he was just saving his life from an assassin, but thanks to this, it was possible to get such a good deal. Without thinking long, he decided to try to put the crown on his head. Immediately after he placed the crown on his head, green energy enveloped him and he transformed into an elf. Looking at himself through the phone's camera, Shen Ye was pleasantly surprised, for he had indeed turned into an elf. He even decided that when tomorrow came, he would try out his new abilities. However, suddenly someone knocked on his door and asked if the guy was home. Shen Ye inquired who had come. He didn't want to be so reckless anymore. After all, another assassin might have come to visit him. That person would be surprised when Shen Ye would open the door in the form of an elf. However, it was obvious that Shen Ye would not do such a thing and would return to his human form. How many more assassins will be sent for Shen Ye's head, and why exactly is he the target of the curse? A familiar voice came from behind the door, asking if Shen Ye was all right. The guy behind the door gave his name. His name was Chen Haoyu. Hearing the name of the guy behind the door, Shen Ye remembered that he was his best friend. That day, Shen Ye went to the hospital to visit his friend. Shen Ye was not going to show himself to his friend in the guise of an elf, and so he reverted to human form. Shen Ye let his friend in, and he immediately hugged Shen Ye because he was so worried about him. The guy started crying and apologized to his friend because if he hadn't been in the hospital, all of Shen Ye's troubles wouldn't have happened. The guy admitted that he didn't blame his friend. Just at that moment, Shen Ye's mom noticed that Chen Haoyu came to visit them. Shen Ye was surprised that Mom came back so quickly, and he wondered why Mom came home alone and without Dad. Mom reported that Dad had gone to Grandpa's house to get some pills. However, Mom was more curious if her son had eaten the recovery pills. And the son confesses that he has already eaten them all. Chen Haoyu was surprised when he heard about the recovery pills. The guy points out that recovery pills are incredibly rare and that even rich people can't afford them. He even thinks that Guy's family is hiding a lot of things. Mum is confused from such questions and isn't particularly eager to answer them. Chen Haoyu notices that his friend's parents are caring, so he asks him to get well soon and get back to studying because exams are coming up. Shen Ye had completely forgotten about it, and only now remembered that the past owner of the body was still in school, so the guy was still waiting for the entrance exam. Because of the ancestral curse, Shen Ye missed the first exam while he was in the hospital. Chen Haoyu was upset because his friend was a top student and would be accepted in any school, and after this incident, his friend will have a problem. Therefore, he apologizes to his friend. His mother asks Chen Haoyu not to blame himself, because even though Shen Ye missed the first strength exam, if he passes the second agility test, he will be able to go to a regular high school. It's as if the author is trying to hint at Chen Haoyu as the main culprit of the ancestral curse. Shen Ye remembered that the entrance exams in this world were different from what he had encountered before. Apart from the normal exams, strength and agility were also tested in this world. He even thought that the moonlit deer walk technique would still be of use to him. However, the situation had changed dramatically because now he was being hunted and it was incredibly dangerous for him to go to school. His mother noticed her son shaking as soon as he heard about the exams. Shen Ye, on the other hand, was contemplating giving up at this very moment. At this very moment, the mum without any doubts walked over to her son and hugged him. With a smile and with all her love, she noted that if her son did not want to take the exams, there was nothing wrong with the situation. She only notes that she and his father only hope that their son will get well. It is the most important thing for them. These words gave the guy confidence, so he, with a smile on his face, asked his mum not to worry because he is not so weak. The guy immediately said that he would go to school tomorrow and take part in the exam. Shen Ye realized that if he decided to refuse to take the exam, his mum wouldn't mind. He couldn't do that and not take the exam. Shen Ye's memories still couldn't get out of his head. His grandfather and family were apparently of noble descent, and his family had a wide range of opportunities. However, the relationship between the relatives in the family was very bad. Shen Ye's parents had never sought help from his grandfather before. They lived off their own labor, so Shen Ye's family sometimes barely made ends meet. So the son was well aware that the medicine his parents brought him was incredibly hard for them to get. The guy realized that it seems that for the sake of his life, his parents had to turn to his grandfather to help him get the necessary drugs. However, there was also a very sad news, which the guy did not want to tell his current parents. After all, despite his parents' best efforts, their son was already dead. Therefore, the guy was pressured by the responsibility as he had to live his life, including the original Shen Ye, and not let the guy's parents down. He stated that he was so hungry, and his mum fed him and his friend ramen. The next day, the guy went to school to take the exam. He looked at the study materials and studied what he needed. Body, spiritual enlightenment, strength exercises. The disciplines differed so much. Shen Ye noticed that considering that the school was quite crowded, and he even thought that the assassin wouldn't deal with him in public. He reflected on the fact that if he managed to get into a good high school, there would be plenty of teachers there to protect him. Suddenly, a guy approached Shen Ye and informed him that Zhao Yibing was waiting for him in the hallway. The guy remembered that Zhao Yibing was Shen Ye's best friend. Walking out into the hallway, he greeted the girl. The girl immediately tells him that she heard that the guy wants to take the exam. She notes that she did well in the first exam, and she is also confident in the rest, so she will definitely get into a better school. Smiling, the guy happily congratulated the girl on her success. However, Zhao Yibing arrogantly asks the guy not to approach her anymore. The other students in the hallway watched the events with interest. Someone even noticed that the girl had rejected Shen Ye. Zhao Yibing arrogantly remarks that she and the guy have different levels and let everyone go their separate ways, so she wants to end their friendship. The guy is surprised by this turn of events since he only missed one exam. The girl did not stop there and noticed that she has already deleted the guy from her contacts in her phone. Shen Ye didn't let the girl just wipe her feet on him like that. He notices that he remembered that all these years a girl came to his class to find him, but he never took the initiative to find a girl. The guy notes that he never wanted to be friends with a girl. Shen Ye notes that he is about to take an exam and that he also hopes that the girl will do what she said and not bother him. One of the students in the crowd remarks that this is true and that Zhao Yibing always followed Shen Ye around when he was considered the best student in the school. Another student is also surprised by the fact that Shen Ye has only missed one exam and the girl wants to embarrass him in front of the whole school. Zhao Yibing heard Shen Ye and the other students' words and blushed as she was burning with shame. However, the girl's friend stood up for her and recalls how Zhao Yibing gave so many gifts to the guy and doesn't understand how the guy can say such words about Zhao Yibing. The girl cried and turned to the guy, noticing that she thought they had been friends all along. However, Shen Ye did not fall for this ploy. He realized that everyone is good at pretending to be pathetic, but no one should underestimate the gold medal-winning top salesman. The guy notices that he accepted Zhao Yibing's gifts, but not her. All the onlookers were in awe of this magnificent scene that the two top students in front of them had put up. Someone even remarked that dark magic is only eradicated by equally dark magic. Shen Ye lastly remarks that he shouldn't have tried to tie him down with gifts. He had nothing else to say to the girl. He even agreed to return the gifts to the girl if she asked for it. However, the guy made it clear to the girl that he wasn't going to be friends with her. The girl was shocked at what she saw. The girl's friend was furious with the words and the middle finger shown. She even called the guy an idiot. The mood of the crowd changed immediately. The girl's friend called the guy horrible. After all, Zhao Yibing loves him. Someone even pointed out that it didn't matter that the guy had good grades because he was acting too low. The guy was asked to leave, for he broke the girl's heart. Zhao Yibing tried to explain everything to the guy, but her friend discouraged her. The girl didn't want things to turn out this way. She didn't understand how she could explain everything to the others, since so many people had seen it all. Suddenly, a huge guy appeared in front of Shen Ye and blocked Shen Ye's way. The big guy told Shen Ye to stop since Zhao Yibing had not yet spoken to him. Shen Ye immediately recognized the guy, for it was Sun Ming, who was in third place in the school. Shen Ye asked the guy to move out of his way as he was walking to class. Sun Ming happily, and at the same time with anger, notices that he hasn't heard from Shen Ye for days. He brags that his strength has greatly increased and that Shen Ye is no longer first in the class. Therefore, he remarks that if Shen Ye doesn't want to wallow with fractures, he should apologize to the girl immediately. However, despite the convincing arguments from Sun Ming, the guy only exhales tiredly. He remarks that Sun Ming is misguided. After all, it was Zhao Yibing who first came to embarrass him. In the end, he is tired and asks the guy to forget about everything and let him pass. Shen Ye is too tired, so he immediately apologizes and informs him that the girl won. Shen Ye also knows how to play this game, and so he cried and remarked that Zhao Yibing can keep on pestering him and that everything will be as she wants it to be. And after that, the guy ran away. Everyone was just incredibly shocked by what they saw. Someone even said that if Shen Ye cried, then he must be incredibly unhappy. Wait, who are these suspicious-looking characters who sneak into the school disguised as students and think we don't recognize them? Denji and Power, what are you doing here? Do you both think that if you change your eye color, clothes, hair color, and Power hides his horns, we won't recognize you? Zhao Yibing shouted after the guy that she didn't mean it and that she didn't want to force the guy to do anything, and also asked the guy not to listen to Sun Ming. At the same moment, the girl realized that she had said an incredibly stupid thing, and that it was all Sun Ming's fault. However, Sun Ming was not enough with the acting that Shen Ye showed, so he rushed after Shen Ye with his fists. Sun Ming swung his giant fist in an attempt to hit Shen Ye in the back. However, Shen Ye at this moment cleverly dodged and used the momentum of Sun Ming's punch and jumped up. Shen Ye in midair pushed off Sun Ming's back with his foot and landed behind Sun Ming. The disciples were simply shocked. They even doubted that they had even discerned everything correctly. Someone was shocked at how incredible Shen Ye's speed was. They noticed that Sun Ming didn't even realize what had happened. The guy's body was enveloped by the greenish energy of Moonlit Deerwalk's ability. He notices that he had already apologized, so he can't understand what else was wanted from him. However, all quarrels were interrupted by the appearance of the teacher. She was angry that the students had made a mess. The woman said that an exam was about to take place, and so she demanded that everyone go to the sports ground in the schoolyard. In order to avoid being punished by the teacher, all the students started to go to the sports ground as fast as possible. Some of the students felt sorry that they didn't see the punch that Shen Ye showed. Sun Ming also wasn't going to let it go like that and noticed that he wasn't done with Shen Ye yet. At the sports ground, a joyful friend of his ran up to the guy. He commented that testing is very slow and that it will not be their turn for a while yet. He even suggests that his friend go to the comic book store that was near the school. When Shen Ye heard his friend's words, he remembered that he had forgotten to take the note because he was so tired that everything had slipped his mind. He grabbed his stomach and asked his friend to take a seat in line for now because he had a stomachache and wanted to run to the bathroom. After looking around in the hallway, the guy ran into the bathroom. Following him into the bathroom was the mysterious killer. However, opening the bathroom stall, the assassin saw no one, which surprised him a lot, because he saw the guy enter the bathroom. Shen Ye used his ability and then opened the door to another world and hid there. He then used Pale Shadow Crown and took on the guise of an elf. Walking down the corridor, the guy couldn't detect the giant skeleton. Suddenly, he stepped on a weapon that was left from an assassin. He was greatly surprised, but now he had another thing for self-defense, even though he hadn't been able to touch the weapon before. The guy didn't know where the giant skeleton had gone. However, he didn't have much time, so he was going to teleport away. Suddenly, he heard a mysterious voice address him. The mysterious voice noted that there was nothing more it could do for the guy, but it decided to give the guy a keepsake gift for last. A moment later, the guy disappeared from the corridor by teleporting. Shen Ye soon found himself at the edge of the forest. He felt dizzy after teleporting. He was still wondering if he was really in the world of elves. Shen Ye was looking at the blade that was given to him by the mysterious voice. He wondered why the mysterious voice had given him this blade. Suddenly, there was a noise behind the guy and he was noticed. Elves came out of the bushes and were surprised to come across an elf. However, they quickly recognized the guy, calling him by the name Fern. They were surprised and at the same time pleased that they had finally found him. One of the so-called elves remarked that if Fern hadn't come, they would have had to declare the mission a failure and inform the others. The guy apologized to the others, noticing that he was in trouble. Shen Ye immediately noticed that the three people he was talking to, all three of them, had a pale shadow crown on their heads, so the elves in front of him were not real elves. One of the fake elves notes that they had managed to gain the trust of the elven tribe, so they were now considered heroic soldiers who merely retreated after being injured on the battlefield. He suggested that the rest of the party kill the elven chief and take possession of his treasure. The guy said that he was fully recovered and ready to go on this dangerous mission. As soon as he touched the crown, the others were incredibly frightened and told him not to touch the crown. One of the fake elves called the guy an idiot and told him never to touch the pale shadow crown because if the guy reveals his true identity, they're finished. Shen Ye apologizes to the others and remarks that he just wanted to correct the crown. The guy realized that everyone had a crown and medal, which means they were hiding a lot of things. The new Fern reassures the others, promising that he won't cause any problems. He suddenly realized that it seems that the giant skeleton had previously pretended to be Fern himself, but now that duty had fallen to him. One of the fake elves commanded the others to go to the elf settlement. The other fake elf also asks Fern to hurry up, as they have lost a lot of time because of him. Shen Ye was surprised at how fast his accomplices were moving. He could barely keep up with their speed, and it made him realize that the beings beside him were now quite powerful. After a while, they arrived at the elf settlement. The fake elf with the short haircut pointed out that in order to enter the village, they had to get permission from the village chief. At this stage, there was no risk for them, as they just needed to show the silver war medal and they would be allowed in. Shen Ye was the last to arrive and was glad that he didn't need to run anymore. He wondered what the risks might be. One of the fake elves pointed out that the three of them would cover him and he would kill the village chief. The guy's face was covered with sweat. He wondered if he should kill the village chief. Suddenly, he felt the atmosphere among the fake elves changed a lot, and one of the fake elves asked if Fern was giving up the plan. The guy turned on all his acting skills and showed surprise at what he heard. He licked his blade and declared that his blade missed blood. The atmosphere immediately returned to normal. Shen Ye had time to react quickly and get out of the situation because he immediately realized that if he refused, the others would immediately swat him. However, Shen Yene was a fool and understood perfectly well that ending the life of the village chief on his territory was practically impossible. Still, he realized that the situation was hopeless. Now it was no wonder for the guy why the giant skeleton had sent him on this case. As they approached the gate, the fake elves asked the guards to open the gate. One of the guards demanded that all of the arriving elves show their silver war medal. Only after they had shown their silver war medals were they allowed inside, and their treatment changed from menacing to kind. As Shen Ye walked through the village, he noticed how smiling the villagers were. He also could not hide his admiration for the local girls he passed by. The elf informed the arriving elves to go inside the building to the village chief, as he was aware of their visit. The chief fake elf asked Fern to go inside, and they were going to wait for him outside. The guy realized that he wouldn't be allowed to escape. Shen Ye was a bit disappointed. After all, he had just arrived and already managed to get into the middle of the showdown between the elves and the undead. However, he did not despair and noted that if he could get rid of the village chief, he might be able to gain superpowers. As soon as he stepped inside the building, the door immediately closed behind him. The village chief was standing by the window reading a book. When the village chief heard that a guest had appeared in front of him, he immediately closed the book and greeted the soldier from the front lines. At the same moment, the system reported that the guy's gate was equipped with the ability to make evaluation records, so the guy could look at the information of other beings. Using the system, the guy took a new look at the village chief. There were many titles around village chief: Spirit of 10,000 Forests, Heir to the Throne of the Ancient Tree, Lord of Nature, Great Magician, Protector of the Nightmare World, Fifth World Chief. Shen Ye was surprised to see so many entries. After that, he only glanced at the inscription above his head: Polite Person. Shen Ye immediately realized how naive he was and that there was definitely nothing he could do against the village chief. He realized that the three people who remained outside were much stronger than him, but even they didn't have the courage to face such an incredible creature. A polite person against the spirit of 10,000 forests, the heir to the ancient tree throne, the Lord of Nature, the Great Magician, the Protector of the Nightmare World, and the Fifth World Chief was just an incredible trick the giant skeleton had thrown at him that he had promised to memorize. How Shen Ye will manage to get out of this situation, and whether he will make it to his exam in time, or whether time flows differently in this world than in the one he lives in now. Suddenly, the village chief praised him for his service and asked the guy to have a good rest. Shen Ye was surprised at this sudden turn of events. In the same instant, he noticed that he was being teleported. He was teleported directly to the table where the other elves were having a banquet. His co-workers were already seated at the table. One of the fake elves noted that it was too early and they needed some rest. Another fake elf inquired if the guy had seen the target. They even expressed a desire to assist the guy in destroying the target. However, the guy was well aware that at the first opportunity, the others would flee, leaving him to die. He realized that to continue like this was tantamount to expecting death. Just at that moment, a girl approached him and asked if he wanted to dance with her. She mentioned that she was honored to be able to dance with the hero of the front line. Shen Ye did not refuse the girl's request to dance, but admitted that he was not a very good dancer. After that, he danced with the girl for a while. Looking at the girl who danced with him, thoughts of imminent death did not leave his head. He wished he could dance with the girl for the rest of his life. Shen Ye realized that he needed to think of something to survive. The girl noticed the guy's mood and wondered why he was silent. She noticed that the guy's brothers were the same, so she assumed that they were so affected by the battle. Shen Ye tried to joke that it was because he thought he was a bad dancer. After that, he learned that the girl's name was Lanny. After hearing the girl's name, the guy wished to give the girl a gift. The girl's eyes even lit up, as she couldn't wait to receive a gift from the battle hero. She also noted that the guy is actually a pretty good dancer, and so she decided to give him a bracelet as a thank you. If the guy disappointed her, however, he would have to give the bracelet back to her in the future. Finally, a simple but ingenious plan matured in the guy's mind. He stood on the table and tried to get the attention of everyone around the elves by letting everyone know that he was going to show them a trick. He informed them that he was actually a human and could change his shape. Lanny couldn't wait to see the trick and asked the guy to show her. The other elves had also never seen a human before, and they were curious. One of the fake elves didn't understand what Fern was doing. Another asked him if he could turn into a human too. They didn't sense the impending trouble as they thought Fern was one of them. The third fake elf was even glad that Fern turned out to be so smart and would be able to get close to the elves. After that, Shen Ye took off his crown and threw it into Lanny's hands. All the elves around were shocked. They noticed the guy's hair and ears and realized that he was human. Turning on all his acting, the guy points out that he could become human by removing the crown. He immediately pointed his finger at the fake elves and noted that his brothers also have similar magic. Shen Ye noted that as soon as his so-called brothers took off their crowns, they would become an undead. The elves instantly, and with all their hatred, turned their attention to the fake elves. They told the fake elves to take off their crowns immediately. The fake elves were confused from such a dire situation. At that moment, a gate opened behind the guy. He announced that once his three brothers transformed, he would return. The fake elves told the guy to immediately turn into an elf immediately and stop misleading others. Shen Ye said goodbye to Lanny and disappeared behind the gate, heading back to the dark corridor. No one could figure out what kind of mysterious magic the man was using. However, they had more important things to do, because they were infiltrated by three fake elves who were undead. Just at that moment, the village chief appeared and restrained the movements of the fake elves. He noted that he wanted to still have fun and play with the stupid fake elves, but the situation changed. The village chief began to mock the undead. He mocked them for being able to infiltrate his village, but failing to recognize that a man capable of working on two fronts would be right next to them. One of the fake elves remarked that there had been a misunderstanding and that they had a silver war medal, but at that very moment the crown fell from his head and he turned undead. The village chief noticed that the crown had hidden transformation magic. He was amazed, for it was an amazing technique. He was disappointed that the undead spies were able to infiltrate the village so easily. With the help of these items, they almost learned all the weaknesses of the elves. Turning to the place where the guy used to be, the village chief noticed that he was indebted to the guy after this deed. The other elves also turned around to look at the place where the guy used to be. Being in a familiar corridor, sitting on the floor, Shen Ye was surprised that the gate could adapt to the environment. The situation was risky, but he needed to memorize such an interesting feature of the gate. Seeing the giant skeleton, the guy walked up to it and started complaining about the difficult situation he was in because of it. The giant skeleton was surprised that the guy was still alive. Shen Ye immediately pointed out that the giant skeleton could talk after all. He began to accuse the giant skeleton of giving him the pale shadow crown on purpose. The giant skeleton was surprised that the guy had survived and was eager to know the details. Shen Ye was not going to answer. Then the giant skeleton told the guy to tell him, and he would give him a reward. Shen Ye was still resentful that he almost died because of the giant skeleton. At this moment, the system reported that an offer had come to him, that the other party to the contract was sincere and based on the principle of equivalent exchange, prepared a powerful undead spell for the guy. Shen Ye became furious at this, for he was not going to just sell out, and declared that the giant skeleton would still regret his action. There was no choice, so the giant skeleton admitted that he gave the guy the pale shadow crown because the guy was human. Elves and humans are allies. He realized that if the guy went to that place, he would still have a chance to survive. If the giant skeleton went by himself, his only end would be death. At the same moment, the guy saw that as an apology, the other party went beyond the principle of equivalent exchange and decided to give him the Legacy Nightmare Crystal. Legacy Nightmare Crystal contained the three most advanced undead talents. A guy could choose one of the talents and integrate it into his soul to gain new abilities. The giant skeleton revealed that the so-called talent referred to personal characteristic abilities that could be manifested without expending any power. Legacy Nightmare Crystal is the foundation of the undead clan and is considered a very valuable treasure. The giant skeleton admitted that the reason he was still alive after being injured was because they wanted to get their hands on the crystal and the inheritance of talents in it. So they didn't kill him, but he still decided to give the crystal to the guy. He even scoffed that no one would guess that the legacy nightmare crystal was now in the man's possession. After pondering for a bit, Shen Ye decided that the crystal was indeed a useful thing. In the end, he decided to forgive the giant skeleton just this once, but declared that there would be no next time. Suddenly, everything around the guy shook, and it was as if he appeared in front of a giant undead king who was sitting on his throne with a giant sword in his hand. The undead king told the guy to choose which talent he wanted to assign to himself, but reminded him that he could only choose one of three. The first talent was Dark Whispers. With this talent, if you use a corpse as a base, the dead will answer the call, come out of hell and tell you everything they know so their souls can rest in peace. Death gives the deepest knowledge. The second talent was Sacred Remains Body. Any force that could kill will cause the body to turn into the body of a holy corpse, temporarily free from the mercy of death's fate. The effect lasts for 5 seconds and can take effect again after 1 day. The description stated that those who want to influence your life or death will end badly. The third talent was Undead Resurrection. It was necessary to create a fireball and place it on the body of an undead that died in battle. The soul fire would fuse with the corpse and resurrect it. There were many kinds of resurrection spell, but this was the best. The talent description said that the mysterious technique was capable of raising the dead, and it was the undead tribe's main power. After learning about all the talents, Shen Ye felt that he wouldn't need undead resurrection. Besides, with the skeleton saint body, he would only be able to dodge any attacks for 5 seconds. So he wondered what would happen when the 5 seconds were up. He noted that Dark Whispers might look like the most unnecessary of the three, but he didn't think so. He realized that only by mastering the information would he be able to kill his opponent. So without thinking long, the guy decided to choose Dark Whispers. After studying the talent, the guy was thrilled that now he would be able to talk to the dead. The giant skeleton was surprised that the guy chose this particular talent. Shen Ye immediately inquired what was wrong with the chosen talent. The giant skeleton only remarked that the guy's fighting ability would not be enhanced by this talent. Relying on his memory, he noted that he didn't remember anyone choosing the first talent. Most people chose the third talent. After the guy chose his talent, the giant skeleton asked again what had happened in the situation with the elves, because it was very important to him. After listening to the story told by the guy, the giant skeleton was shocked. He explained that the original target of the murder was supposed to be the sacrificed elven woman. He also pointed out that the village chief the guy told about was actually the strongest elf high priest. Shen Ye was now not surprised that the village chief had such a large number of titles. The giant skeleton was glad that the 3 undead knights had been caught by the elves, because now they wouldn't be able to follow him and devour him. The giant skeleton realized that he had his only chance to survive. After that, the giant skeleton rushed to leave. The guy, of course, tried to ask him where he was going, but he didn't hear an answer and didn't stop him. He decided to take care of himself and opened the gate to his world. The guy did not ask the giant skeleton, as he realized that everyone could have their own secrets. Once the guy went back to the restroom through the door, the system reported that as a result of this door opening, the guy was awarded the title of One of Us. The One of Us title was of green quality. According to the One of Us rank, when a guy tells someone that he is one of them, they will indeed be mistaken for their man. After 10 seconds, the enemy will forget what happened. This skill could only be used once a day. The total characteristics of the target could not exceed the characteristics of the guy twice, otherwise the resistance to the effect could begin. The guy was ecstatic, as the rank was now of green quality. In addition to this, the guy also received a bracelet of natural blessing. The guy was surprised that the bracelet that Lanny had given him turned out to be so good. According to the system, the bracelet of natural blessing was of green quality. Wearing the bracelet increased the guy's intelligence scores. Shen Ye was delighted because despite how hard his day had been today, he had received a new technique and a bracelet. Back at the sports field in the school courtyard, the guy watched his friend take the physical skills test. Shen Ye wished his friend good luck. Chen Haoyu was overjoyed and thanked his friend. He even began to boast that he could do anything, and that this exam was nothing. However, because he was distracted, he was hit directly in the head with paint. The teacher immediately pointed out that Chen Haoyu deserved it, since he had been showing off a lot. Nevertheless, he gave Chen Haoyu a score of 71 and told him to be happy that it wasn't a real exam. Shen Ye was called next to take the test. As soon as the test started, Shen Ye dodged the paint with ease. The others were even shocked that the paint didn't keep up with the guy. One of the students noticed that the guy's posture was too relaxed, as if he was skating rather than taking the test. Someone even noted that Shen Ye seemed to have become more agile after being discharged from the hospital. Shen Ye didn't think about anything else. This test wasn't that difficult for him. All he needed to do was to show a few elven techniques, and then he would pass the test. Standing in the shade of a tree, the principal along with some man were watching the test that Shen Ye was taking. The man noticed that Shen Ye looked quite interesting. The principal noted that the guy was first in his class but missed the first exam due to illness, so the principal wanted the man to take a closer look at Shen Ye and give him a chance. The man noticed that Shen Ye had a good physique and that he was quite talented. He noticed that if Shen Ye got the highest score on the mental power test, he would give him a chance. In addition to strength and agility, the entrance exam also required a test for a special quality, mental power. The principal was surprised to hear about the mental power score. He notes that the head of Qian is already overdoing it. The principal was so worried because he remembered that Shen Ye's mental power was quite mediocre. Meanwhile, Shen Ye decided to wait for the final results first before looking at the scores. He thought that the average score was not enough and that he should get the highest score in all the indicators. The teacher even let out a tear as the guy scored the highest in the agility test. The teacher felt sorry that the guy missed the first exam, as it ruined the guy's future. Shen Ye, on the other hand, noticed that he still hadn't given up on taking the exams despite missing the first exam. After that, the teacher decided to take a break for lunch, and he was going to continue the further test in the afternoon. Chen Haoyu immediately ran up to his friend and offered him something to eat. However, Shen Ye advised him to first wash the paint off his face, and he himself was going to go to the library in the meantime. Soon Shen Ye went to class and sat down at the school desk. He was happy to note that math and chemistry were exactly the same as in his original world. But the language and scientific knowledge, as well as historical events and even literary works in this world, were completely different from his original world. The guy complained that his head was hurting because he had the feeling that different memories were fighting in his head. Suddenly, his school desk flew up along with his books to the ceiling from a strong kick from a person. That person turned out to be Sun Ming, who had once again come to pester the guy. Sun Ming reminded the guy that he had said earlier that things couldn't just end. Shen Ye asked the guy if Zhao Yibing had told him to do this. However, Sun Ming was extremely dissatisfied with what he heard, so he told Shen Ye not to even dare to say the girl's name. Sun Ming began to boast that while the guy was away, his strength had already increased to 2 points. He couldn't wait to compare who was better, him thanks to his 2 points of strength, or Shen Ye with his 2 points of agility. Despite his words and arrogant tone, Sun Ming didn't come alone. Shen Ye was bored, so he decided to use the ability of his One of Us title. After falling under the influence of the ability, even Sun Ming noted that he was just asked to help by Zhao Yibing. Another guy also noted that they didn't want to oppose Shen Ye. The third guy noted that he was only here because he liked the girl, and also Shen Ye was acting arrogant all the time. That's why he wanted to beat him up. The fourth guy asked to forget about everything because they are allies and shouldn't fight. However, Shen Ye pointed out that fortunately he had applied his skill on the students, so nothing terrible would happen. Besides, the effect of the skill only lasted for 10 seconds, so all those students would once again stare bloodily at the guy after 10 seconds. The skill could only be used once a day, so Shen Ye decided to use skill absorption. The system immediately reported that Shen Ye had gained 3 skill points. The guy decided to put the 3 points into the strength characteristic. The system showed him a hint that in addition to the 3 characteristic points he had received, he could also freely reallocate the 1 characteristic point that had been previously added to agility, thereby increasing the strength score, for example. Shen Ye was surprised that he could use the already distributed points so freely. He was up to something devious, for he could now transform from a nimble assassin to a powerful warrior by investing 4 points in strength. As a result, his strength was increased from 1.2 to 5.2. While Shen Ye was pondering and studying the system, one of the guys grabbed him from behind and restrained his movements, hypocritically declaring for Shen Ye to fight Sun Ming. Since when did a simple beating become a battle? Sun Ming was already running towards Shen Ye at full speed, waving his fist. He was already asking the guy how many ribs he was willing to sacrifice. Without making any attempt to break free from Guy grip, Shen Ye received an incredibly powerful punch from Sun Ming. Sun Ming was surprised for a second at what happened next. Then he screamed in pain as he broke all of his fingers as if he had hit a rock. Why are they all so eager to get hurt? Can't they realize that he is the protagonist and that everything goes to him? Zhao Yibing, who knows how to play on people's emotions just by letting a tear fall, started this whole mess. Shen Ye was well aware that an adult who had not undergone any special training possessed a basic strength and agility equal to 1. Therefore, he easily tossed aside the guy who was restraining him. Shen Ye easily sent the guy to rest. Good thing at least, not to the other world. He understood that as a basic characteristic, strength was not just brute force. The guys standing nearby were shocked that Shen Ye was unharmed even after Sun Ming's punch, and also easily broke free from the hands of the guy restraining him. The guys were frightened, as Shen Ye seemed to be stronger than Sun Ming. However, Shen Ye thought about the nature of strength at this moment. He believed that strength rather referred to the strength of a person's limbs, the strength of the 5 internal organs and 6 senses, the strength of the 8 vein channels, the strength of the movement of flesh, blood, and the level of cell displacement, the criterion of vitality. All these aspects together he could call the parameter of the characteristic strength. He began to complain that he had only missed 1 exam, and the others had somehow decided that they could beat him. The entrance exams were about to start soon, and the guys had gotten together to fight for the wind, so obviously they didn't care about other people's lives. Sun Ming, lying on the floor, continued to hurl verbal curses towards Shen Ye. Shen Ye easily lifted Sun Ming above the floor with 1 hand. He asked politely so that Sun Ming wouldn't bother anyone else. Sun Ming immediately started apologizing, asking for forgiveness. Shen Ye was bored with these guys because all they were capable of was humiliating others, beating them up, depriving them of a bright future. Therefore, Shen Ye couldn't wait to practice his punches on a seemingly tough guy like Sun Ming. Even the students outside heard the cries for help. Soon, the teacher who had taken the mock exam earlier ran into the room. Shen Ye began to complain to the teacher that the other students were hurting him. However, after seeing the beaten students, the teacher couldn't believe it because Shen Ye had clearly beaten them and now claimed that he was bullied. At this moment, Zhao Yibing, who was standing behind the other students, realized that she had miscalculated, thinking that the others would beat up the guy. Her face was covered in cold sweat as she realized that so many strong guys couldn't deal with Shen Ye. She couldn't believe that the guy had become so strong. However, she had another ingenious plan matured. Her friend inquired if she regretted that she was the reason why everything happened like this. Zhao Yibing believed that if she continued to be diligent and kind to the guy, then everything would be fine and they would be friends. However, she did not wish for such an outcome. She now realized that Shen Ye had beaten up other students, injuring 7 to 8 people, so she believed that the guy would definitely not be allowed to take the exams. The upstart thought that her goal had been achieved, so she didn't have to waste any more time with Shen Ye, but she had a bright future ahead of her, unlike the guy. She turned on all her acting skills, saying that she hated herself for not realizing what a scumbag the guy was before. At this moment, Sun Ming stared at her intently. The girl was afraid that Sun Ming would drag her into this showdown by telling her that she had started it all. She wished Sun Ming dead and wanted him to shut up. However, Sun Ming suddenly said her name that everyone around him clearly heard it. Silence ensued, and everyone turned their heads towards Zhao Yibing, who was startled. She turned on her acting skills again, crying and trying to run away, letting everyone know that she would call the police right away. Shen Ye was a little upset that Zhao Yibing had used such a sneaky trick to get others to turn on him. The teacher also got worried when he heard about the police. He told everyone to go back to their classes and asked Shen Ye to follow him. The principal, meanwhile, continued to show off the school. He said that their school had some wonderful students, so he asked Chien to take a closer look at them. Chien noted that the problem wasn't that he didn't want to help his friend, but that he needed to meet the minimum requirements. He began to complain that he still had tons of things to do, so he wasn't going to stay long. Suddenly, one of the teachers ran up to them and reported that Shen Ye and Sun Ming had gotten into a fight, causing even the police to arrive. The principal didn't understand why he would want to know about this right now. However, the teacher took out her phone and asked the principal to look at the video of the fight. The principal couldn't understand what could be so surprising because the students were just fighting, but in the next second, he and Chien couldn't keep their eyes off the phone while watching the students fight. Meanwhile, the police were also watching the video on the phone. One of the police officers was surprised that Shen Ye was recording the video on his phone. Shen Ye admitted to the officer that he was afraid he would be killed, so he recorded the video. The officer didn't really believe it, considering the guy almost nailed the attackers himself. Shen Ye was ecstatic that he had prepared everything in advance, or else the situation would have been dire. The officer felt that despite having the video, the guy would still have to make his way to the police station with the officers. The teacher tried to intercede for the student, pointing out that Shen Ye had already missed the first exam, and if the officers took him to the police station right now, they would deprive Shen Ye of another exam. The officer tried to convince the teacher not to worry because they would bring the student back after they checked everything. The teacher still thought that the officers would ruin the kid's future. Shen Ye meanwhile hoped that his body could adjust to the fact that he was constantly changing characteristic points. At this moment, the principal walked into the office, praising Shen Ye for videotaping the whole incident. Because if Shen Ye didn't, he would definitely be expelled from the school. The teacher immediately got excited when he saw the principal. Chien encouragingly pointed out that Shen Ye's physical fitness was superior to the other students and that they were not his equal. The teacher was glad that Chien had a high opinion of Shen Ye, as the teacher was greatly worried about Shen Ye's future. Chen was the most experienced, so even after seeing a small snippet of the battle, he immediately noticed that the guy was holding back. Shen Ye admitted that he was holding back because he was afraid of killing the students. Chen was admired that the guy had high moral character. Chen thought that the guy had just earned the highest grade for his body skills on the trial test, which should be enough for the guy to get a recommendation from him. He wanted to discuss some things with the guy. Getting the business card in his hands, he decided to take a closer look at it. On the business card it said, Martial Arts Company, Director, Chen Rushan. Shen Ye was greatly surprised as this was the famous martial arts company. A martial arts company is an organization that has mastered the legacy of various martial arts knowledge and holds the ownership and copyright of martial arts secrets. Simply put, if you get into this company, you will immediately rise from the bottom to the top. Shen Ye even compared getting into this company to the road to heaven. Examining Chen Rushan, who stood in front of him, Shen Ye felt as if he had no weaknesses at all. No matter how he would change his characteristics, he realized that at this moment he was no match for the man in front of him. Chen noted that the evaluation system had analyzed Shen Ye, finding out that his strength was at least 4.5 points. The man was curious as to what the guy's characteristic points actually were. Evaluation system. Artificial intelligence in this world, it allows you to evaluate a person in all aspects. Shen Ye immediately realized that Qian was incredibly strong, so his first thought was that by working under Qian, he would be able to deter the assassins. Based on his considerations, Shen Ye admitted that his strength was equal to 5. The principal and teacher were shocked when they heard this information. Qian, on the other hand, reacted calmly, calling this result not bad. Shen Ye wanted answers, so he asked if a strength of 5 points was a lot or a little. Qian had to explain that at the middle school stage, a strength score of 4.5 points was already a passing score for their company, and 5 points was a different result. Once a person reaches 5 points of strength, he would be able to control some battle-type armor as well as use standard-level ancient weapons. Since the guy got the highest score in the test, it should be enough for Qian to personally recommend him. If the guy still decides to join their company, then he will have to take a second test to assess his true abilities. Shen Ye was surprised to hear about another test. Qian explained that normally another test would not be conducted, but he felt that such a talent could not be passed up so easily. so he wanted to conduct a second test to make sure of the guy's skills. Without hesitation, the guy decided to accept Qian Rushan's proposal. Since he agreed, Qian told him that a person would be coming soon to take care of the organizational processes. Regarding the police investigation, Qian advised the guy to handle the matter calmly. He was willing to retest at any time convenient for the guy. Shen Ye was incredulous at the turn of events, thanking Qian Rushan for everything. Qian was about to leave, but lastly decided to ask how the guy was doing with mental power. He was curious, since the guy's strength and agility stats were already up to his company's standards. Not knowing all the rules of this world, Shen Ye decided that he couldn't be the best at everything. So he decided that 3 points of mental power should be enough for a minimum pass into the company. As soon as he said the number 3, Qian Rushan simply had a stunned expression that opened his mouth. The principal, the police officers, and the teacher were all completely shocked. The principal couldn't believe that Shen Ye had 3 points of mental power. After all, he thought it was mental power that the guy had a problem. Qian Rushan came back again and started to poke at the guy with a frightening aura. He asked if the guy could demonstrate his mental power. Qian noted that with 3 points of mental power, a person could even move objects with his mind. He wondered if the guy could move a chair with mental power alone. Shen Ye realized that it was too late to deny it, especially since he didn't want to be considered a liar. Therefore, he decided to add characteristic points to mental power, and then he was able to move the chair quietly. The police captain announced for the others to leave. The officer was surprised that they would have to return to the police station empty-handed and turn a blind eye to the incident. The young officers still couldn't understand, so the captain tried to explain to them. He reminded them that Shen Ye had strength equal to 5 points, good physique, agility at the same time equal to 4 points, and to top it all off, the guy's mental power was equal to 3 points. The young officers still didn't understand what the captain was implying. The captain had to tell them straight to their foreheads that the guy had a big future ahead of him, which meant that he was out of their league. They just can't do anything with such a talented guy. Therefore, the captain told the other officers that they were leaving. Meanwhile, Shen Ye was already visibly tired, so he admitted that he couldn't hold the chair anymore. Qian Rushan was simply ecstatic after the experiment. Since his appearance in this school, he had yet to show such a gorgeous and radiant smile. He even started singing a song about celestials. The teacher and principal praised Qian for singing well. Shen Ye was embarrassed. He didn't realize whether he needed to, besides he didn't know how. Qian then asked the principal and the teacher to leave the room as he wanted to talk to Shen Ye alone. Once the teacher and principal left the office, Qian asked the guy what was his ideal. Shen Ye decided that this was a good time to act like a sycophant, so he declared that Qian Rushan was his ideal. However, Qian corrected the guy that the question was a little different. He was curious about what the guy desired most. Thinking back to the assassin's constant attempts to massacre him, Shen Ye confessed that he wished he was not a weakling. He wished to be able to defend himself and his family. After hearing the guy's wish, Qian decided that the guy was the closest to his dream right now. In addition, he asked for the guy to hurt him. Shen Ye immediately started hurling various insults in the man's direction, which only amused the man because he wanted the guy to forcefully try to hurt him. Without thinking about the consequences, the guy switched his characteristic points to strength and tried to strike. However, as soon as Qian looked at the guy, he felt as if he couldn't move, as if his movements were restrained. Qian explained that he had applied a type of magic art that could immobilize an attacker, so if a guy learned it, he would be able to defend himself. He even started to ask if the guy wanted to learn this kind of defense method, fueling the guy's interest to join his company. Qian didn't stop there. He took out his weapon and decided to show another trick. As soon as he fired, nothing happened, so the police didn't have to be asked to come back. Qian explained that another kind of magic art from the company's secret archives. This kind of magic art was able to resist various hidden weapon attacks. In addition, the magic art was so powerful that it could resist a sniper rifle. Shen Ye admiringly remarked that martial arts can't be broken. Qian liked this phrase so much that he even wondered where he heard it. And after the guy said that he had come up with it himself, Qian thought that the guy was definitely a genius. Now Qian decided to officially invite the guy to join his hidden dragon plan. Shen Ye couldn't understand what the hidden dragon plan was all about. Qian explained that the Hidden Dragon Plan was a company's project to cultivate supernova stars. According to this plan, Qian decided that they would recommend a guy to the top 3 high schools in the world, although the guy would still have to take an entrance exam. However, this was not an entrance exam, but an exam designed by these 3 schools to test aptitude. Qian pointed out that ordinary people couldn't access the exam because it had long been monopolized by the world clans. Guy had only recently arrived in this world, so he didn't fully understand the current situation of this world. Qian explained that the clans were those who inherited knowledge, sacred tools, and blood ties from the gods of ancient times. The martial arts knowledge inherited from these ancient major clans is much larger than the ones in his company. They control vast expanses of land, population, and wealth. The great clans stand high above the people. There was a chasm between them and the common people that could not be bridged by any means. The guy even thought that maybe Shen Ye's grandfather was also a member of these clans in the past. The Hidden Dragon Plan is looking for geniuses like Shen Ye, so the company will help Shen Ye get into the most prestigious school, and even if he fails, the company will still guarantee him a place in high school. If the guy manages to get into any of the top 3 schools, the whole company has pledged to support the guy with resources and tailor his future career based on his abilities. When the guy reached the point where he could no longer develop, he would return to the company where he would be treated with honor. Therefore, Qian asked the guy to think things over carefully. Shen Ye became even more aware that in this world, strength was paramount. Therefore, the guy practically didn't hesitate and instantly agreed to Qian's proposal. Shen Ye realized that it seems like they were once clan members, but for some reason his father was expelled. Because of his family's status, the police didn't take the situation seriously. In addition, his mother had to beg to get 4 kinds of recovery medicines, but such recovery medicines were of little value to the clans. Today he had injured people but was not held accountable, all because his power had become so powerful that he could already break the normal rules. Qian asked the guy to sign a document and put his fingerprint if he agreed to such conditions. The guy became even more aware of why teachers always emphasize strength in class. He understood that mankind must rely on the strong, because only then could civilization continue to exist. Qian reminded the guy that the guy could start by thinking things over carefully, as surely other organizations would not sit idly by and go in to get the guy into their organization. However, Shen Ye believed that since Qian found him first, he would join their company. Qian did not object, believing that the guy had made the right choice. However, Shen Ye was still a minor, so Qian had to contact the guy's parents to sign the documents. Shen Ye informed that his parents were most likely at home right now. Without wasting time, Qian wanted to go to the guy's parents as soon as possible, so that other organizations wouldn't have time to intercept him. After signing the papers, he was going to return to the guy. Suddenly, Qian's image began to blur, and with a monstrous speed, as if using the wind, he disappeared. The guy was surprised at how fast Qian moved. The principal and teacher, who had been standing outside the office door all this time, immediately inquired how everything went for the guy. Shen Ye admitted that he had already signed the documents, and Qian Rushan went to talk to his parents about signing the contract. When the principal and teacher heard the happy news, they started dancing. They were happy that now their school would surprise everyone. Suddenly someone called the guy. Even though it was an unfamiliar number, he answered the call. As it turned out, it was Officer Luo Feichuan calling him. He said that he had managed to find out something about the guy's case, so he asked the guy to come to the police station. The guy looks like he'll show up at the police station after all. I wonder how the captain and the officers who recently left the school will react to his appearance, or if they are actually different police stations. And that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you would like to see a sequel, please like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your wishes in the comments. You can also subscribe to Telegram to know about new videos. Bye everybody.